So I'm super excited about our new series that we're starting today. It's called You're Not the Boss of Me, and its subtitle is How to Say No to the Emotions That Compete for Control. Nobody likes to be told what to do they? If you're a parent, if you have kids hate it being told what to do. And in fact, I would be a brilliant parent if my kids loved being told what to do. I'd win Father of the Year, but kids, as they grow up, they hate being told what to do. But it's not just a kids thing, it's an adults thing as well. If you're kind of a manager or if you supervise people, you know that telling people what to do is not always easy. You've got to be careful how you craft your words and what you say, because none of us love to be told what to do. We love to be in control ourselves. We really want to just have autonomy so that we can do what we want to do whenever we want to do it. It's kind of a human thing that we want to be in control, but certainly the culture and society we live in here in the UK, it particularly values that idea of freedom, that people can do whatever they want, whenever they want it, that we love to be in control. But the question for us today is, are you in charge of yourself? You know, you love to be in control, to do whatever you want to do, but are you really in charge of yourself? Because I reckon what's true for you, because it's true for me, is that when we get in trouble in our lives, in different areas of lives, whenever we get into trouble, it's rarely that we get into trouble because we don't know what we're supposed to do. Let me just say that again. It's rarely that we get into trouble in different areas of our lives because we don't actually know what to do. You know, so you think about money, you get to the end of the month and you run out of money and your pay hasn't come through for a few days and you've run out of cash. Or if you're somebody who's got debt problems, credit card problems, you don't get into those situations because you don't know what to do. You know, you don't run out of money at the end of the month because you didn't realize if you spend all your money, you don't have any money. You don't get into credit card problems because you just didn't realize if you spend money on your credit card, then you've got to pay it back even if you haven't got the money. It's not a lack of knowledge that gets you in trouble with your finances. Or think about the habits that you have in your life. Maybe you've got unhelpful habits, even harmful habits. Maybe you drink too much. Maybe you overeat and you eat too much sugar. Maybe you look at stuff on the internet that's really unhelpful to you. You know, and if you get into trouble in those areas of your life, it's not because you don't know the effects of those things. You know the effects of alcohol. It's not that like you eat loads of cakes for a month and at the end of the month you put on weight and you think, I never realized that eating all that stuff has the effect. Knowing isn't the problem. Or think about your kind of relationships. If you have a difficult relationship with somebody at work, or you have issues in your marriage, or with your kids, or you fall out with a friend, and you've said some things to them, or you were disloyal, or you let them down, or you forgot their birthday, or you weren't kind, it's not because you didn't realize that those behaviors had an effect. You know what effect that it has. Or think about your faith. Maybe you're struggling to read the Bible. Maybe you've stopped coming to church on a Sunday. You've fallen out of the habit. Or maybe you don't kind of pray so much and your faith is starting to die. Your enthusiasm and your commitment for God, it's kind of going downhill. The issue is not that you didn't realize. It's not like, I didn't realize if I didn't read my Bible, or I stopped going to church even if it's online, or I didn't pray. I didn't realize that would have an effect. That's not the issue. You know the effects of things. The challenge is not knowing. The challenge is in being in control of yourself, being able to do the things that you know that you need to do. It's a kind of control issue. And we're going to be thinking particularly today about our emotions and how they compete for control in our lives and the effect that they might have. And I wonder for you what emotions you have in your life that are competing for control just now. What are the emotions that you tend to sense that are trying to compete for control in your life? I don't know, is it anger? Are you someone where envy is a particular issue? Do you carry around with you a sense of guilt or sense of shame? Is the emotion around insecurity or fear? What's the emotions that compete for control in your life? Because we're not always our best self. We're not always doing the things that we want to do. Other things, other forces other things are in our lives that are competing for the control. And we're going to be thinking particularly about emotions. And if you've got any of those negative emotions that are competing for control in your life, and you can think of situations where they're competing for control, where you don't always do the things that you want to do, I'm sure that you could think about some of the effects of that you'd be able to think about some of the negative effects on your life and on the people around you. And I'm sure that you'd want to be someone who could learn the subtitle of our message, how to say no to the emotions that compete for control. And what we're going to do through this series, each week we're going to think about a particular emotion, and we're going to think about actually how do we learn to say no to that emotion that might be competing for control in our life, so that we're not just people who know what we're supposed to do, but actually we learn to have that power. We learn to have that control, that autonomy, where we really do what we want to do. Wouldn't that be fantastic? And today what we're going to do is kind of set up a bit of a framework. We're going to kind of set up some key principles today that's going to really set us off on the journey. And I'm going to give you a couple of practical things that you could do that's going to prepare you for next week. If you're someone who doesn't want to just listen to some messages, what a bit of video, but you really want to engage with God, you really want to open yourself up to what God wants to do in your life, then I'm going to give you some very practical things that you can do between now and next week so that you're really ready for what God wants to do. And we're going to get those practical things from Jesus. Because my experience of reading about Jesus and what Jesus said is he just understands the human condition so well. That when you read what Jesus says and you kind of wrestle with some of the words and his teaching, you kind of discover that he just understands us. He understands me, he understands how I tick, he understands what my issues are. And so we're going to look at some of the really insightful teaching of Jesus that we find in Matthew chapter 15 today. And we're going to look at that, which is really just going to set us up for this series and set us up for a couple of the practical tasks that we've got for this week. So let me just grab my Bible, and we're going to look at Matthew chapter 15, and we're just going to look at some of the things that Jesus says here. And this is how it starts at the beginning of Matthew 15. This is what it says. It says, some Pharisees and teachers of religious law had arrived from Jerusalem to see Jesus. So some of the religious teachers had arrived from Jerusalem to see Jesus. That's the kind of start of our story here. And when it says they've arrived from Jerusalem, Jerusalem was like the headquarters. It was the place of power. So when Matthew, who's recording this, he's saying they come from Jerusalem, he's kind of saying they're coming from a place of power. It's like someone today saying they've come from Downing Street, or they've come from Capitol Hill in America. They've come from a place of power, and they carry power and authority with them. And it says they've come from Jerusalem, they've come from kind of headquarters to see Jesus. And what they don't mean is that they've come because they're quite interested in Jesus. They've come to say, oh, what does he look like? They've kind of come to see Jesus, as in someone in authority has come to see you because they want to put you right, because you're in trouble. And they've come to see Jesus because Jesus is saying things that is upsetting the people in power. And this is what they say. They say, why does your disciples disobey our age-old tradition? They ignore the tradition of ceremonial hand washing before they eat. What they're saying is, we're religious teachers, we're in the religious authorities, and we've got all sorts of traditions, and we've got all sorts of rules, and we've got all sorts of rituals, and the people who are following you, Jesus, are not following the rules. They're not doing the traditions. They're not doing the things they're supposed to be doing. Now, I don't know if you've come across religious people or religious teachers or religious authorities. What you'll find is what they want to do is separate people into two categories. They want to separate people into the good people and the bad people. And they want to put a very clear line down the middle and work out who's in or who's out. And the way they'll often do that is with lots of rules, sometimes very specific rules, so it's really clear we can see who is in and who is out. And the problem with religion, and the problem with lots of little rules that determine who's in and who's out, who's good, who's bad, who's on God's side, who's not, is that it can make God come across as very petty. That God is interested in whether you wash your hands or not before a meal. And if you do wash your hands, then you're in. And if you don't, then you're a bad person, you're out. And it makes people come across as very petty. And so Jesus' followers are not doing that. And there's a bit of a discussion, and then what Jesus does is this. He calls the crowd to come and hear. So he's going to speak to the religious leaders, authorities, but he's going to do it in front of the crowd because he wants the crowd to hear in verse 10. And this is what Jesus said. He says, listen and try to understand. It's not what goes in your mouth that defiles you, that makes you unclean. You're defiled by the words that come out of your mouth. That's a key line, and that's going to help us say no to the emotions that control us. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But look what happens next in the story is really, really interesting. Because the disciples come up to Jesus when he said that, and they say this to Jesus. They say, Jesus, do you not realize that you've just offended all those religious leaders? Do you not realize you've just offended the ones that have come from Jerusalem, they've come from headquarters, they've come to check them out, and what you've just said has really offended them. Do you not realize that, Jesus? And Jesus says, effectively, paraphrase, but Jesus effectively said, yeah, I realize I've offended them, just ignore them. That's what Jesus said. He says, I realize I've offended them, but just ignore them. And I find that so inspiring by Jesus, that Jesus is someone that he's not threatened by those in power and authority, those with strength, those are the ones who can condemn him to death. He's just got no worries, no fear. He doesn't care what they think. And if you were to read some of the other things that Jesus said, you would realize that the reason Jesus doesn't care, the reason that Jesus is not intimidated, because he's only got his eyes on one person, and that's God his Father. He just got all his attention on God the Father. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? That's what I'm going to do. And I don't care what anyone else thinks of me. And that's what gives Jesus such incredible strength and such power. And I found it so inspiring to be that sort of person. And I don't know what impression you get from Jesus or what sort of person he is. You know, sometimes people kind of try and water him down and just think he's kind of a nice person who just said lots of nice stuff. But here you've got Jesus saying, well, actually, I offended them and just ignore them. And then Peter comes up to Jesus next and he says something to him. He says, listen, after he said he'd offended them, ignore them, Peter comes to Jesus and said, will you explain to us what you meant by the people are not defiled by what they eat? Peter's saying, you've offended the religious leaders. They understood what you were saying and they've been really offended by it and you don't care about it. But us simple disciples, us simple fishermen, actually we didn't get it. We actually didn't get it. So Peter, who becomes later the leader of the church, he's kind of thinking, I don't even understand what you're saying, Jesus. It's too hard. Will you explain it to me? And in a sense, that's quite encouraging, isn't it? The people Jesus chose to follow found it hard to grasp him. And just because the religious authorities had all the head knowledge, they understood it, that actually didn't count for much for Jesus. And so what he does is to Peter and the disciples, he says this, he explains this, says, listen, let me explain. He says, anything that you eat passes through the stomach and then goes into the sewer. So he's saying, well, listen, the reason why it doesn't really matter so much if you wash your hands, God's not going to like you because you wash your hands before your food or whatever, is because, okay, let's imagine you don't and you get something unclean in your mouth. Whatever you eat goes into the stomach. Jesus saying, do you get this? Don't want to be too explicit, but he's saying food goes in and it comes out to the sewer, meaning the toilet. He said, and then it's gone. What does it matter what's gone in, because it's gone out and it's all finished. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal. It's not going to make you unclean. But, he says, the words that you speak come from the heart, for that is what defiles you. From the heart comes evil thoughts and murder and adultery and all sexual immorality, theft, lying, slander. That's what defile you. Eating with unwashed hands will never defile you. Jesus saying, well, it doesn't matter what you wash. Forget these kind of petty rules. You know, the food just goes in and it goes out. Actually, what defiles you, Jesus said, is what comes out your mouth. So when Jesus says defile you, he's meaning what kind of affects your relationship with God. What separates you from God is not following religious rules, but actually what you say that might offend other people. What affects people in the world? What affects relationships? Because really what God is about people. And if you affect other people in a negative way, then that's going to affect your relationship with God. That's what defiles you. And Jesus gives some examples. And what's really interesting is that we want certain things to matter more than other things. And all of us have areas of life where we think, well, that doesn't really matter. It's really important you don't do this and don't do that, but that doesn't really matter. And Jesus says, actually, it all matters. Sexual immorality, it really matters. What you say about others behind their back, it really matters. Theft, economics, what you do with your money, it really matters. All of it matters, and it can defile you. It can make you kind of unworthy in the presence of God. And some of us want to say, well, it doesn't really matter about the money thing. If you don't kind of give generously and tithe and just spend it on yourself, that doesn't matter. Or some of us want to say, well, sexual immorality, we live in a different age now. You've got to kind of go with the flow. It doesn't really matter. Some of us want to say, well, it doesn't really matter, if you speak behind someone's back. As long as you're not too horrible, it doesn't really matter. And Jesus is saying, actually, it all matters. All of life matters to God. All of it can make us unworthy, unclean, kind of defiled between us and God. And whereas we want to say, well, that kind of matters, but maybe not that, it's saying, actually, Jesus said it all matters. And that's quite a huge thing for us to get our heads around, because there'll be areas of life where you think, actually, I'm not sure that really matters. There'll be bits of the Bible where God speaks against things that you look and you think, I don't know if that really matters. But Jesus is saying here, actually, it all matters. It can all defile you. It can all make you unclean. And then Jesus goes a step further, and he says something else that's huge. He says it's huge that everything matters, but his second thing that he says is just as huge. And he says this, that the things that defile you, your kind of words and your actions, the things you do that affect God and affect other people, Jesus says they come from your heart. The things that you say and do that affect other people, they come from your heart. Now, at one level, you kind of say, well, obviously they come from your heart. But actually, in reality, we often deny that they come from us. I don't know if you've ever got home and you've been really short with your kids or with a friend or with your wife or husband, and when they've challenged about it, you've said, actually, no, I've had a long day. The reason I was unkind to you is because I had a long day. Or you've done something, you said, I don't know why I said that. I don't know what come over me. You're kind of trying to blame other people, or you're blaming your circumstances. And Jesus is saying, actually, the reason that you did it is because it came from your heart. I don't know if you saw recently, there was a video doing the rounds on Facebook. And the video was a story of a guy, it was an office guy who was in his office, and he'd got a cup of coffee, and he was walking along the corridor with his cup of coffee. And a colleague came around the corner and went past him and bumped him. And as he bumped him, the guy staggered and he spilt coffee out, and it went all over the next person. And as the video played, the caption was this, with a question, and it said, why did the guy spill a cup of coffee? Why did the guy spill a cup of coffee? And you kind of think, well, the reason in the video he spilt a cup of coffee is because somebody went past him and nudged him, and that's pushed him, and that's why he spilt a cup of coffee. But the video clarifies and says, well, that's why he spilt his cup. But why was it coffee that he spilt? It was coffee that he spilt because there was coffee in the cup. If there was tea in the cup, he would have spilt tea. If there was water in the cup, he would have spilt water. And he was kind of making the point that what's inside comes out when life bumps us along. And Jesus is kind of saying the same thing here. He's saying what's in your heart is actually what comes out of your mouth and what comes out in your actions. And we can kind of blame other people, or we can blame circumstances, or we can say we're having a bad day. But Jesus says actually the reason anger comes out, and the reason jealousy comes out, and the reason insecurity comes out, and the reason anxiety comes out, and the reason gossip comes out is because that's what's inside. That's what's inside. And that's kind of a huge step to accept, because we probably will struggle sometimes and we'll blame other people, or we'll blame circumstances. We're saying, well, no wonder I behaved like that. Did you know what they said to me? Well, do you know how many hours I've worked? That's why I behaved like that. Can I just tell you what my kids have done? I'll tell you that's why I act like that. I actually had an incident this week. I mean, God always has a sense of humor with me. Whenever I'm kind of preparing a message, he likes to give me a personal illustration just so I can work through the message for myself. And just this week, I was having a challenge with one of my kids who's with me, and the challenge, and I was really, really angry. All right, something had happened, and I was really, really angry, and I wanted to slam doors, and I wanted to kind of be really horrible and grumpy because I think that she did something that really annoyed me. And as I sat down and took a few moments to pause, this doesn't always happen, but actually it did in this occasion. I was able to just take a minute and think, actually, there's a spiral here. All right, let's just take a minute. And I was able to say no to the emotions that wanted to compete for control. And I was able to go up to a room, and I was able to be nice and be calm, etc., and not behave unreasonably. And but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes things will come out, and if they do, I would blame other people. I would think, well, it's that person who's caused that. But Jesus is saying, whatever's inside is what comes out, and you will face bumps in life. You'll face people, and whatever's inside will come out. And you're probably wise enough and you understand enough that if there's negative stuff inside and they come out, that'll cause trouble for you in your relationships, in your decision making. You'll say things that won't be helpful. It will make you unhappy. If in your cup you've got love, and it's full of joy, and it's full of peace, and it's full of kindness, and it's full of selflessness, and someone bumps and that falls out, then you could probably work out the impact on your family life and your relationships and your decisions and your mental health and your lifestyle. And probably like me, you want your cup filled with good stuff, that when you bump into people, you want stuff to come out your heart, but you want good stuff in your heart in the first place. And so what I want to do and encourage you, just as you kind of start on this journey of thinking, well, what's inside us, and am I in control, or are the other forces getting me to do things that I don't really want to do? I want to encourage you to do maybe 2 practical things this week, that if you really want to kind of engage with what God is doing. I want you to have that analogy of the cup as you go through your week, as things bump into you, as things happen. And I'm going to invite you to do 2 things. First thing, I want you to notice what's in your cup. I want you to notice what comes out. I want you to notice what emotions you've got going on. I want you just to notice what reactions you have going on this week. And then the second thing I want you to do, and this will be quite a challenge for some of us, I think. What I want you to do secondly is I want you to own them. That when that comes out, that you don't blame other people. It wasn't because it was a bad day or because of somebody says. Actually, you're going to own it, and you're going to basically use the words of Jesus, say, well, that came out because that's what's in my heart. I behaved in that way. I had that lustful thought. I had that anger. I was short with someone because actually that's what's in my heart. I want you to notice it. And then I want you to own it. And recently I've been starting to use a journal. I've had a break from journaling, but I use a journal at the moment, which is just to reflect on where I'm at with God and what's going on in my day. And you may want to just jot it down and just to kind of reflect and observe yourself of actually how are you reacting, what's coming out. And I'm just going to invite you to own it, to own what those things are. And I want to give you a spoiler really as you go into your week. I want to give you the spoiler, and the spoiler comes from a Bible verse in Romans 3, verse 23, and it says this, it says, all have fallen short of God's glory. It means everybody's fallen short of being who God's called them to be. You know, everybody's not quite where they're supposed to be. And so the spoiler really, as you go through the week, you're going to find that there's stuff in there. All right, stuff's going to come out. So don't be surprised when you react and you observe emotions that you're not particularly proud of. And whereas kind of the religious people Jesus was talking to, they want to separate everybody into good and bad, and these people follow the rules, these people don't follow the rules. Actually, what Jesus said is all of us has fallen short. Actually, we're all the same. We're all in the same boat. Nobody's better than anybody else. Nobody's worse than anybody else. And so actually, you're all the same as everybody else. As you go through and you find things out about yourself, that everybody else is just in the same boat. You're just kind of exploring what's in there under the guise of the Holy Spirit. And why do you think Jesus said this? Why did Jesus say, well, what's inside and comes out through your mouth, that's what defiles you. That's what makes you unclean. That's what makes you not right. And then he kind of lists all these possible things that we might have inside us. Why do you think Jesus said that to the crowd and to his disciples? How do you see Jesus? Do you think he was kind of saying it in this kind of angry, beating people up, just disgusted with everybody, that he wanted everyone to feel bad about themselves, that he wanted everyone just to be aware of how terrible? Do you think that was what driving Jesus? Or perhaps there's something else going on for Jesus. And as you go through and you do those kind of two steps, you're trying to observe what's inside, and then you kind of own it and say, well, actually, that's come out because that's what's inside. As you do that under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, I want you to have this picture of Jesus. Because Jesus wasn't doing it because he was angry and because he was disgusted with people, that he wanted people just to be feeling really terrible about themselves. It's because of a couple of other verses that Matthew records Jesus said in chapter 11, verses 28. This is what Jesus says, and this is why he wants you to be aware, is this. He says, come to me. Jesus says, come to me. Let me be the one to be your master and to control you, he says. Not your anger and not your emotions, not your insecurities, and not your fear, not your anxiety. It's Jesus saying, I don't want those things to control you. Come to me and let me control you. It'd be because Jesus says, I'm gentle and I'm humble. I'm not kind of people power play with religious people trying to control you and putting you into a bad thing so you feel terrible about yourself. Actually, I'm gentle and I'm humble. And Jesus says, take my yoke on you, meaning follow my way. And the thing that kind of drives Jesus to share that with people, to make them so aware and to come to him and take his way on them, is not to beat people down, Jesus says, but he says, so that you'll find rest for your souls, so that you might be free from the emotions that compete for control. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that sense of rest from those things that damage our relationships and damage our decision making? And so as you go through your week this week, I want you to carry that image of the cup and just observe. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you. Maybe at the end of the day you reflect back on your day and just think, what came out of my cup today? And just observe it and just own it and say, that came out because that's what's inside. And don't beat yourself up and don't feel kind of terrible. Everybody's in the same boat. And just have that sense of Jesus with you. Jesus who's going to lead you on journey. Jesus who's going to teach you how to say no to the emotions that want to compete for control, so that Jesus can give you rest. Let me just pray as you go on this journey. Father, I just want to pray for me, and I want to pray for everybody watching this, that may sense your Holy Spirit just revealing their hearts to them this week. That you will show them what's inside, not in a judgmental way, not in a way that they're going to feel terrible, but so they sense your presence of leading them to the place of freedom. That they may discover what's there, and that may lead them to your arms, the one who can set them free, the one who can give them rest, the one who can give them a new way to walk. Amen. So stick around. We got another couple of great videos and stories to tell you about through this service. But the one I just want to tell you about just now is all about Compass. And that's a project in Oswestry where we've got a house. And this week we've got our first residents moving in. And our ambition, our vision is to see homeless people find a solution to their homelessness, to see long-term change. And we're still looking for volunteers. If you're wondering what to do with your time and you'd love to make a difference to the lives of homeless people, and you're in Oswestry, then get in touch with us, because we'd love to get you to be part of this project. And but just now, we've got a little video and for you to actually see inside the house and to see a little bit more about the project. And so over to you, Andy, to just show us around.
Hello Hope Church, and welcome to our tour of the new Compass House. We'll go in the house in a moment. I just wanted to say that we're missing you all and we can't wait to see you all again. But anyway, come on in the house and you can have a look. So we'll take you down into the lounge first of all. So if you just follow me down this way. So this house has been brilliant for us because it's a HMO, so it's got everything we need. Integrated fire alarm system. We've got all the fire doors and everything that we needed. So it's just been such a blessing of a house to get. If you want to have a look around. So this house will house 4 people, 4 homeless people or people that are at risk of being homeless. So we're just so blessed to be able to have this house. It's all been through a partnership with Green Pastures. They have brought this house for us. So they brought this house for us back in February this year, and just because of lockdown, we've just been unable to get into the house or move people into this house at this stage. But the teams have been really busy getting everything ready. There was a bit of painting and decorating to do. Getting a few other bits and pieces sorted out, but now this house is ready to go. So here's an example of a shower room for you. And we'll go into a bedroom now. So all the bedrooms are this kind of standard. So all the rooms have a small double bed. They've all got double glaze. They've all got the doors that a HMO house requires. It's absolutely perfect. And let's go up to another room and show you that as well. It's a 3-storey house, nice and spacious. Another bathroom for you to see what we've got here. Another bedroom for you. So this side of the building is a lot quieter, so whoever has this room is going to be really blessed. So that's the tour, guys. So just 3 things that we could really do with your help with. Number 1 would be to click the link that Derek sent out yesterday, which was Friday. And there's just a couple of things that we need from the Amazon list that we put on there. So if you want to donate to the Compass Project, go on there and then you can buy some of the guys that have been moving into the house a duvet or a pillow or whatever's needed. So click on that. Number 2, we need volunteers. So we need a volunteer for a key worker or a befriender or anything like that. So if you're interested in that role or you want to know more, just email me. That's also on Derek's email, and I can give you some more information or ask any questions you've got on there. So that would be amazing. And then the third and final way that you can really help is your prayers. Please just keep on praying for the guys that are going to be moving into this house. So we've got 1 guy lined up. We need 3 more guys to come into the house. So please continue to pray for them, and then also just pray for the team. Pray for the team that God will be giving them the skills that they need to be able to support these guys, that we would be able to find enough meaningful activities for the guys, especially with lockdown and everything else that's going on. And then just pray for the whole team and the residents that we're going to have moving in, that we're all just gelled together with grace, and there would be a sense of peace in this house. We're doing this not only to help people, not only to give them that that step that they need. But we want to see souls saved. We want to see these guys coming to Jesus. So please pray. That would be amazing. So that's it for the tour. So thanks very much, guys. We really miss you. We're really praying that we'll be able to come back together soon. But that's all in God's hands, isn't it? But we miss you guys. God bless. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Cool, wasn't that exciting? And as a church, we want to make a difference in people's lives, help them with their social problems. We also want to make a difference and help people grow in terms of their spiritual questions and their things they're running about. And we often run the Alpha course, and we've got an Alpha course happening which you can join and be part of if you kind of want to explore what the Christian faith is all about. And we've just got a little interview just now with a couple of people, Anne and Jeannie, who are on our last Alpha course, and listen to their story and how they found the course. And we'll just go over to them now. Thanks, Anne and Jeannie.
Hi, I'm here with my friend Jeannie. We'd just like to tell you a bit about our experiences of attending Alpha.
Why did you go on the Alpha course?
I was brought up as a Catholic, and I moved out of home as an old teenager and then fell away from my faith. I came back to my faith in 2014 when my hubby was unwell. So I started going back to church, but I just didn't hear about Alpha. I joined Hope Church in 2019, and at that stage they were mentioning this Alpha course. And from the information at the time, I could see that it explained some of the basics of the Christian faith. And although it might seem that being brought up Catholic, I might know these things, I think as a child you're not told some of the information.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I might as well go along and let's see what I can learn from it.
Yeah.
And I do feel as though it's filled in a lot of those gaps for me.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can understand where you're coming from. But the reason I went on the Alpha course was for many years I had been feeling I'd like to contribute towards society more in a general way. And then, I was also wondering, what is the deeper meaning of life? Apart from the love, I had for my family, I felt there was something deeper. Why are we here? And then I saw the big adverts of the Alpha course on all the red London buses. There were a lot of adverts. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? And that's really why I went along. So, which part did you find the most useful?
What I liked was that it sets out very clearly that the Bible is a historical document.
Yeah, definitely.
And from that, it means that Jesus was a real person. He's not a made-up figure.
No.
So he existed, and having that, it was just nice to have that confirmation that what I believed in is true.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I work in the science and the biomedical field, I'm trained to evaluate research. So in our secular society, many people, say, oh, Jesus is just a fairy story. So the Alpha course addressed some of those questions, but motivated me to look even further. The main difference it's made to Alpha course has made to me is the Alpha weekend I went on. I was very sceptical about when people say, they feel a connection with God, and I thought I'd nothing to lose. Either it's going to make a difference to me or it isn't. But when we all prayed, and there's quite a few people there from all over England and Wales, and only if we wanted to, the experienced Christians would lay their hands on the newbies in a quite, not intrusive way. And I really did feel this wonderful feeling and connection with God. It is a real feeling that I've never experienced before. The most profound time and moment of my life. And ever since then, whenever I pray, I get a mini version of it. And it keeps my faith alive. That's all I could say. It's so profound.
And it shows you have a real connection with God.
So what would you say to someone who's thinking of coming along?
really you've got nothing to lose. If you don't believe in God, if you're not sure whether God exists, or if, like Jeannie, you're thinking what is the meaning of life, to come along on an online Zoom course where you can contribute if you want. If you want to sit quietly and listen to other people, that's also okay.
Yeah.
You might just be surprised what you hear and what you take away from the course. And if you're already a Christian, I think there's lots you can take too, as I did.
Yeah.
It just fills in some of the gaps where you might not know things and give you a different way of looking at things and maybe encourage you to do more.
Yeah.
So, what about you, Jeannie?
No, I enjoyed the Alpha course. I've been on 2. They were when we, before COVID, and we could go in groups. I'm not a group person. I like a one-to-one, and so I was nervous, but everyone's very welcoming. You don't feel self-conscious. You're not pressured into doing anything you don't want to do. And of course, online, for people like me, online Zoom is even better. I would say give it a go. What have you got to lose but a couple of hours of your time every week? And it might change your life.
Yes, there's so much to gain.
Yeah.
I think that's what we both feel.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to us.
So whatever your kind of faith or church background, it doesn't matter. If you're interested in just kind of exploring some spiritual questions in a safe place, and you're wondering about God and Jesus and where it all fits, then you'd be really welcome on our Alpha course. It's happening online, so it doesn't matter where you live in the world or the country, and it begins on 1st of October. It'll just be for an hour watching a video and kind of sharing your thoughts about it. And you'll see the web address just below. You can go to that web address and you can just fill in your details and you can register on that, and you'll be really welcome. And you might just want to do that now. And you'll see as a church, we're investing in our work with homeless people. We're investing in all these digital resources, in our kids' work. And we would love it if you would be able to help us to pay for that stuff. If you want to help and contribute financially, you can go to our website. You'll see the address there, /give. And you'll be able to go there if you want to just do a one-off donation, or if you want to kind of give regularly. If you don't already do, that would be fantastic. And just thank you to everyone who gives generously on a regular basis. You've got standing orders set up and you regularly support all the things we do. All this is possible because of your generosity. So thank you so much for what you're doing and the part that you're playing. And if you're kind of new to us and you want to connect with us and you want to be kept up to date, then go to our website /connect, hopechurchoswestry.org.uk/connect, and you can sign up there to be part of our mailing list, and we can keep you up to date with all the different resources that we produce. And we regularly email everybody out every week and give them updates, so you can keep in touch with what we're doing if you're finding what we're doing useful and helpful, and you can put comments in there as well. So that's it for today. We'll just finish with a final song, and then if you want to join us for the chat in Zoom after the service, then you'd be really welcome. The details will come up at the end of the screen. But over to the band just to lead us in a final song.
Even in my wandering, you are joy, of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. You are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord, all creation will proclaim. You are here in your presence I'm made whole. You are God, of all else I'm letting go. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. I know I'm running to your arms. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing no other name. Jesus. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love